Hello and welcome to Colin Bunyan's cooking video. This is the third in series 3. I'll admit it's been a while. The weather's never really played ball. It's bloody hot out there. I mean, anyone who's seen me upside down pineapple cake video recorded in the snow knows that the weather doesn't like to play ball. It's not been the video I've been wanting to do for a while because I know this is going to be controversial. It's going to be heavily opinionated and it's going to upset a lot of people. But this is how I would do steak and ale pie. First up, beef dripping for frying, a little bit of corn flour, that's going to turn into a slurry so I can thicken the gravy later, 1 giant onion, Nor beef stock pot, better than OXO cubes in this regard because of the texture, a good beer. Now I'm going to talk a bit about this because this is pivotal. I've got a Doombar Amber Ale, doesn't have to be Doombar, but you do want a beer that's amber or darker for the flavour profile, and don't get a cooking beer. Get a beer you would quite happily have a pint of in a pub. And then you got your steak. Now, I went to a butcher's for my steak, so I go for large chunks of steak like that so they can caramelise well, but they end up with a good quality texture at the end. I've got a solid wedge of beef dripping, beef fat. You need that. Now, I know some people put bacon in. I'm not a fan of bacon in steak and ale pies. Don't get me wrong, I love bacon. But you've got steak, you've got onion, you've got ale, you've got all the strong flavours, you've got beef stock, all rich flavours. You don't need any more strong flavours like bacon competing in that regard. Some people use bacon fats for this, fine, that's okay, I'll take that, that's not a problem. Whilst that is melting, what I'm going to do, slice the onion in half. And all we're going to do is we're going to whack this up, okay, quite coarse. We don't want any fine dicing because this is going to break down over a fair amount of time. So, and now the beef dripping is melted in and it's up to temperature. Get that in there, and you're frying off 1 pound of steak. Do it in batches. 1 whole onion in there, and they need to sweat down for about 7 or 8 minutes. Now before we get too far in, I have to address a couple of issues, okay? First of all, I'm not a huge fan of carrots in steak and ale pie either, okay? I could take them in a small dose, but I'm not huge, okay? A small amount's fine, but some go over the top. So one thing I do not, under any circumstance, situation, existence, eventuality, guise, option or protocol, put in a steak and ale pie, mushrooms. People who put mushrooms into a steak and ale pie are the same type of people who, when they sneeze, they use your hand. Not good at all. The only place the mushroom belongs in is Super Mario. Now the onions are quite well toasted, you can see that there. Okay, quite well toasted. What I'm now going to do is put the beef back in and the accumulated juices, as much as you can, straight it in. Right. Give it a whisk around the tongs. Now I'm going to deglaze the bottom of the pan. 300ml of this, so 200ml left. Let's add a bit more. And then the same of beef stock goes in. And then a teaspoon of corn flour with about 4 teaspoons of water, just to turn it into a slurry to make sure it thickens up later on. Cracked black pepper, a bit of salt, not too much because the stock will have enough. I'm going to add a pinch of smoked paprika, just a touch. Alright, there's a faint hint of heat, but I'm also going to add a generous amount of thyme. That needs to come to a boil. Right, next up we need to make, so what I'm going to do Lid almost on entirely, just leave a small gap for steam to come out. That goes into the oven at gas mark 3. See you in 90 minutes. So I'm going to need 700 grams of pastry for the flan dish for my wife to make her quiche and the pie. So all you need to know is it's 450 grams worth of pastry for the pie. 400 grams of plain flour, or 450 plain flour, 300 grams of flour for the steak pie, 150 for the quiche, and I would say 125 grams, but this needs to be cut into blocks. This needs to be cut into slices. Okay, and whilst I'm on the subject of pastry, let's get this out of the way. Okay, another opinion of mine: never ever put puff pastry on a steak and ale pie. Should be short crust all the damn way. Got some water, that'll make it 700 grams. Pastry blender, and this gets chopped up for several minutes until the fat is incorporated. And now add the water. Now you don't want to work this dough too much. It's not like making Cornish pasties, so needs a bit more single egg right into the mixture. Just adds a little more richness and a little moisture. So literally just a that's probably a little much, we'll see. So literally just that, just tip it all out. Now it shouldn't really crumble, it should just about hold together. It's not often I do a freestyle can, but that's what that should look like after an hour and a half in there. The gravy is thickened up nicely, and it'll thicken up even more once it's cool. This is literally just out of the oven. This needs to get to room lightly floured hands, 2/3, 1/3. So I'm going to say that's half, that's about right. Okay, reserve that portion, that'll be for all this quiche. I'm then going to split it again. That's for the lid. This has to fill that base. Flour on the pin, and you want this to be as thin as you can possibly get away with. Now it's okay. Grab a fork and lightly dot the pastry at the bottom, that way it doesn't rise up. Using the ladle in the steak and the onion. It's about ideal. Look at that. That's how it should be. Because we now roll out the pastry for the lid. This is why we want this to be at room temperature, because if you don't, the pastry would melt. Okay. Create a little hole in the middle there for ventilation purposes. Crimp it down, get an egg, rusty pastry brush, just brush lightly with beaten egg, and there we are. That goes into the oven for 40 minutes. We'll see it when it comes out. Right, the pie's had about half an hour to cool down. It's still going to be roasting hot, okay? Because outside it is just insanely hot. This will serve 6 easy, generous portions. Oh wow, that's rich pastry, man. You can hear the crunch on the crust. The ale's not too powerful, It's been mellowed because of the cooking process. Still got the flavour of it. The steak is so tender, my God. This is how steak and apple pie should be. I've been doing the digital on Colin Bunyan. Good night.